something like, are clay pots made out of clay? It'll probably be accurate. If you start asking it questions involving politics, then it's more likely to be wrong. And intentionally, it's made to give you the wrong answer. It's made to the Google algorithm and social media algorithms are made to control the flow of data to try to push progressive liberalism. I mean, every one of them has a clear progressive liberal bias. And if you're a progressive liberal, you're probably not going to notice that bias. You're just going to be like, oh yeah, it's just telling the truth. And some people have started to contract out their ability to reason to AI, their ability to critically think to AI, their ability to remember things. They're contracting all these things out to Google like it's some kind of god. People are just ask Google. And another way that they censor is sometimes you'll have someone like Benjamin Netanyahu, and he'll say something like America can drop and blow up, drop and blow away when we're done with America. Or he'll say, we control America, or something like that. And then what they'll do is they'll take his quote and they'll add something he didn't say to the quote, and they'll spread that around a bunch. And other people will spread it around a bunch. And then people will say, well, is this quote true? And they'll say, no, that quote's not true. He never said that. But he did say like 99% of everything in the quote. But they've purposely put this other statement in there so that you'll just think he never said any of it. Or, like if you notice with fact checkers during COVID, there's a lot of things that I said and other people said that got censored and they wouldn't let anybody see it. And they said it was misinformation. Well, now they admit it was true. It was true the whole time. But while it was true, it was being called misinformation. And if you pay attention, Google Quick Answers will change the results they give you depending on whatever psyop's going on at any given time. The Google algorithm is continuously changed to fit whatever psyop is going on at the time. If you pay attention, if you go ahead, you'll see that they'll change the data. They'll move the decimal point over to the 10 spot. They'll move a decimal as a spot over. The same Google Quick Answers that was telling you, oh, we spent 30 billion. Now when it becomes unpopular, they say 3. Google is a very dishonest company. And when China wanted to really enslave their people, Google was willing to sell the information of the Chinese people to the communist government of China, knowing they were oppressing people. No, they were rounding up these people. I forget how to pronounce them, but they basically did some type of yoga type exercise. They believed in peace. They didn't believe in war. And they would do these kind of light exercises that had health benefits. And the Chinese government demonized these people because they didn't want people preaching pacifism. And they would round them up and harvest their organs and sell their organs to rich Europeans and other people that could afford it. It's terrible. And Google, knowing this, said, you know what, we're going to give all the information of the Chinese people that we have to China for a price. And I'm telling you, them same Jews that did that to the Chinese to get some money will do it to the American people. And already have, more than likely. And so we've fallen into this trap where the convenience of smartphones, it has us pretty much, and you know, people are social. People want to share their stories and everything. And we've just handed over all the information they need to predict our future actions. You know, with these AI learning algorithms and everything. And we see people's brains that use AI very heavily, they start to lose the ability to think critically because they're contracting it out. The brain starts to just say, why waste energy remembering when people just use Google? Why use a part of the brain to think when people just ask Google? When people just ask ChatGPT or whatever the fuck it's called? And they do. If you really pay attention, start paying attention, and you'll see the Google algorithm changes all the time. They bury information. They spread a lot of misinformation. And you can act like you have a noble goal. You can say, because there is too much misinformation, especially with all these AI videos. But you can say, we're going to get rid of misinformation. But then if you've got the authority to decide what is and what isn't misinformation, you can just get rid of the truth right along with it. Or you can spread misinformation. You can call lies the truth and the truth lies. It's a big problem with hate speech legislation. Because if they can tell you what you can't hate, they can tell you what you can't love. You know, you ought to be able to express hatred or love. You ought to be able to really have free speech. But I worked insulation yesterday, bats insulation, and I put up a lot of insulation. I probably should have took a marker with me and marked every piece I done and then go record the whole thing. And you know, it's ridiculous. Woke up pretty sore and hurting today. I'm hurting everywhere. But I'm going, I think, to do roll-up doors today, but it's not certain. The company I work for, a lot of times when we leave, we plan what we're going to do the next day, and then when we get there, something's changed. Not all the time, but it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens enough that there's no real certainty. I don't think I'm doing insulation today, but I might be. I might be doing roll-up doors or garage doors. I don't know what I'm doing today. I got up to get out of bed, and it just hurt. I probably got some insulation in my lungs. I should have wore a respirator. I didn't think about it with the bats insulation. And you know, Gabe was saying he was itching more than he normally itches. I guess there was more of that insulation in the air than there normally is. I probably had more of it in my lungs. But when I went to sit up, it just hurt my lungs so bad. And I sat up about 3 or 4 times. It was like so painful. But then the last time it wasn't. I think I might have like an infected cyst somewhere near my lungs. And it's putting pressure on them, and then when that shit gets squeezed out, I don't know what's happening. But I did get that mullein leaf extract, and I've been taking it. They're cleaning my lungs. It's hurting right there. Oh, the camera don't even see where I'm pointing to on my lungs. Mostly today it's the right lung. Sometimes it's to the center, sometimes it's to the right, sometimes it's to the left, sometimes it's everywhere. But you know, when you hear something, you know, a lot of people trust information they heard that they don't even verify. If somebody that they like tells it to them, or somebody they trust tells it to them. And media has this type of magic where They'll tell the same truth or the same lie to so many people at the same time, and then those people go and talk to other people. And so if somebody hears something from 4 or 5 different people, and they just say, "Oh, I heard this," and they don't cite the source or anything, people are likely to believe it. And when everybody's told the same thing at the same time, even the people that don't watch the media are going to hear that same information from multiple sources, and they're going to be more likely to believe it. And then also, when people make a bad decision, they're very slow to realize that they made a bad decision. When people are deceived, they're very slow to admit that they're deceived. They pride themselves in their intellect, and they don't want to believe that they was tricked. And also, people don't want the discomfort of knowing how evil a lot of people are, how much they're being extorted and taken advantage of. So it's really not a good idea before the infant's blood-brain barrier is fully developed to be putting a bunch of mercury and aluminum preservatives 30 times over with aborted baby cells and animal cells and all that kind of stuff. It's really not going to be injected, like getting 30 mercury and aluminum injections that's going to go into the brain. It's not going to be very predictable what part of the brain will be damaged, but the brain will be damaged. The baby's young, the brain will repair itself. The brain's very plastic, but it's going to cause issues. And people aren't going to want to see it, because people aren't going to want to say, "Yeah, I fucked up. Yeah, I hurt my baby's fertility and their IQ. My baby got SIDS and died because of my choice." Sanitation is really what reduced disease. Because, with the vaccines, how they used to be wouldn't have been so much of a problem. The real problem with vaccines is they don't want to spend the money to make a sanitary factory to make the vaccines. They would rather just use mercury aluminum preservatives to extend the shelf life of the vaccine. That's the real issue. But even if you go back, a lot of people who are getting the worst cases of polio were vaccinated for it, or got it from other contaminated vaccines, or got it from unsanitary living conditions. And a lot of things that weren't polo were falsely called polo. But what a vaccine's doing is it's trying to give you a small amount of an inactive virus and let your body make an immune response to it. And if your body's healthy enough, your body has these things called T cells. And they can make a program for what viruses or bacteria they've encountered. And they can store the information of how to make the antibody. And your body can make different ratios of T cells based on which bacteria or viruses it thinks it's likely to encounter. And so really, the vaccine is not really doing anything that just partial exposure to the virus that's out there would do anyway. Like if you got and they change and mutate so fast and so often, you can never make a vaccine that just covers all strands of the thing itself, whether that be the cold or the flu or COVID or polio or smallpox or whatever it is. Because as they take different hosts, they adapt, they change, like bacteria. Viruses very quickly change because a virus doesn't reproduce on its own. It uses genetic material from the host. And every time it gets a different host, it makes a different strand. And then, they use a lot of chickens and horses and aborted babies and all kind of different things to grow these different cultures. But, do you think you should be putting dead tissue from animals into your bloodstream? Mercury and aluminum? Of course not. Mostly, if you were to get sun If you were to, linen is an antibacterial fabric. There's not very many antibacterial fabrics. Mostly fabrics resist disease just from being dry. Bacteria need some moisture. But sunlight, not being so stressed that it hurts your immune system, good nutrition, exercise to put your hormones where they're supposed to be at, not being too sedentary of a lifestyle, not too much sugar. If you're just in a more healthy state, your immune system is amazing. And it can detect just about anything and fix anything. But most of the problem is overconsumption of food. You've got to give your body a break. You've got to be able to fast, go through a period of not eating, and then your body's able to regenerate on a much larger level than while it doesn't have time to because it's having to process food. Your body's supposed to cycle back and forth between growing and regenerating, eating and not eating. And, most of the health problems are because we never fast. We don't get enough sleep. We don't get enough exercise, or we get too much. We overexert to where we bottom out our testosterone, raise our stress hormone too much, and then it just hurts our immune system. Some people just don't ever even get a hug. They don't even get physical contact. There's all kind of different things that stress the immune system. And a lot of the immune system has to deal with all the surface area in the gut. I don't know, it's around 70% of your white blood cells are normally having to be diverted to focus on the gut. So just giving that a break frees that up to go help the rest of the body. And you've got to go without eating, 36 hours or more. And then your body will start to recycle old, wore-out white blood cells and make them into new white blood cells. It'll increase the white blood cell count. It'll increase the human growth hormone. And a lot of the reasons they tell us that our health is benefited is not really the reasons. A lot of what the medical industry does is they give you different pills, a lot of them petroleum-based, to mute symptoms. And a lot of times the symptoms are part of the healing process, but the symptoms are uncomfortable. So they just give you all these chemicals they can sell you to mute symptoms. They don't really want you healthy or really fix it, because then they lose business. Like a lot of these vaccines, they know they cause side effects like autoimmune disorders, allergies, neurological disorders, just all kind of different problems, but that they're okay with that because then they can go and sell you a lot more pills. And they tell you things that really bullshit. You'll have a lot of health problems if you don't have enough salt and enough cholesterol. So that you try to fear those things, because if you'll cut your cholesterol enough, cut your salt enough, you'll be unhealthy all the time. You'll have all kind of symptoms that they can sell you pills for. Now, the doctors, they know what they're taught at medical school. And the Rockefellers bought up the medical school, and they just took out all the teachings that used to be taught about all the different plants that heal and replaced it with all these pills that were synthesized from petroleum products. And Rockefeller, he had a monopoly on oil back in the day, and he bought up the educational system, not just the public school system, but the medical institutions. And so, I don't know, a lot of people just blindly follow authority. If a regular person told them something that was absurd and ridiculous, they would reject it outright. But if a perceived authority tells it to them, they'll say, yeah, that makes sense. Now, I'm just a regular guy. And in some things, I'm not all that smart, and in other things, I really am. Everybody's got their strengths and weaknesses. So there was this lie going along for a long time that we were overpopulated. And I was looking around and seeing that the poor people were fat off EBT. And I was thinking, in what sense are we overpopulated? Because if we had 10 people, we could only be hunter-gatherers. If you get a few hundred people, we could probably have an agricultural society. We got to get a lot of people to where we can start getting, specialists at, man nuclear power plants and build computer chips. So I'm thinking, how are we overpopulated? That doesn't make it. And I started looking at population demographics. And I started looking at the ages of people. And I was looking and I was saying, well, you got a lot of people hungry in places in East Africa and North Africa that have population explosions. You could maybe make the case that they're overpopulated, but we're definitely not overpopulated. And then I was looking at our birth rates, and I was looking at the aging population and everything, and I was like, dang, we're about to have a population collapse. We're not overpopulated. We're about to have a massive labor shortage. And I began to say that this was a lie and it wasn't true for about 15 years before Elon Musk said it. And everybody pretty much just laughed at me, told me I was wrong, told me I was crazy, told me I was ignorant, told me I was brainless. And then about 15 years later, Elon Musk says it, and then people start to say, hey, maybe. And then, some more time passes, and then it starts to get in news articles. The same news articles that were pushing the lie that we were overpopulated then goes and says, yeah, we're in population collapse, we need to import immigrants. So they basically lied to people, they gaslit them, and they made them think, hey, don't have no kids, you're overpopulated. And then they were like, look, we're going to have a labor shortage if we don't import all these other cultures into yours. This is done by design. And there were people like that Jewish woman, I can't think of her name, they were making videos openly saying that the Jews were going to be the main pushers of multiculturalism. And I have on my Facebook a list of all the NGOs, all the non-government organizations that are completely owned and run, operated and funded by Jews. There's lots of them. There's probably over 30 of them that push to open the borders. So they always say, these Muslims are causing the problem, but who are the traitors in all the Western governments, and now Eastern governments too? This is starting to happen in Japan and Korea as well. They're trying to break up all nations, to fill them up with so many different other nations so they can't get along. While, Israel maintains an ethno-state. I don't want to get distracted and talk about that too much. But I'm just saying, you pay attention to what media does. They lie so shamelessly and get away with it. And they're not really there to tell the truth or report what's really going on. They're there to shape public opinion to get people on board with what they already want to do. And they'll say the most dumbass shit that nobody believes, but then they'll say the same thing for 10 years, and then people will start to believe it. Bashar al-Assad of Syria did not kill Christians. A lot of Muslims believe he was a heretic, because I guess he was, because he didn't believe in forced conversion. So the Christians could be Christians in Syria, the Sunni could be Sunni, the Shia could be Shia. And there was pretty much freedom of religion in Syria. There was also no Rothschild Bank. There was also no genetically modified organisms allowed. The Monsanto wasn't making their money. The Rothschilds weren't making their money off of Syria. And the Christians weren't being killed in Syria. So they overthrow him because they say, oh, he's a danger to his own people. And then they put the terrorists that we used to fight in Afghanistan and Iraq, they put him in charge. And he's killing all the Christians now. So now all the Christians are being killed in Syria. That's what your American tax dollars are going to do. Kill all the Christians. It's like some of them rabbis said, Islam is our broom to sweep the Christians away. I don't, some people, they try to give you these two options, whose side are you on? The side of the Jews or the side of the Muslims? Well, I'm not either one of them groups. And neither one of them groups really like me. One of them calls me a goyim. Oh, that's the plural. But one of them calls me a goy and one of them calls me an infidel. and both of them say I deserve to die. If the Jews had their way, they'd have the world court in Jerusalem, and they'd kill me under the Noahide laws. And if the Muslims had their way, there wouldn't be anybody on the planet except the Muslims. Everybody else would be dead or enslaved to pay the tax. So I don't fall into this false paradigm of, I know neither one of them are really my ally, really. The same thing with the Republican and Democratic Party. I don't fall into that bullshit either. Neither one of them, neither the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, have my best interest in mind. Both of those parties have betrayed their own countrymen and are just stuffing money in their pockets. And they don't care about the future of this country at all. Their family's going to be rich. They can move to whatever part of the world they want to move. A lot of them have dual citizenship. A lot of them have houses in other countries as well. If this country falls and crashes and burns, they don't care. They're already planning to pivot to China anyway. They've already made deals. They've already sold out this country. It's like, George Bush, he said that if the American people knew what they were guilty of, that we would hang them. And he's on video saying it, And it gets kind of tiresome, because they get the other, whatever party, Republicans or Democrats, whichever one's in power, to where they, you really think they could make the change to fix things. They always can't, like the Republicans right now, they needed a super majority, so they needed 60 votes. They just needed a few Democrat votes. The Democrats don't vote. And then they say, okay, it's the Democrats' fault. We couldn't get this passed. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. They didn't want the Democrats to pass it in the first place. It's their turn to be the fall guy. They switch it up. They get you to keep supporting these two parties that work together to keep a monopoly on power. 70% of what America wants, they don't get. They get about 30%. And then not even, 50% of the people support these two different parties. And these two different parties, they act like they're on opposite sides against each other, but they really are all one big club of inside traders. They're all working for Israel. It's like the Spartans that were taking the Persian gold, or the Persian silver, or the Athenians that was taking the Persian silver and trading their own country. That's what we have in America. We have a whole bunch of people that are willing to take Rothschild's money, willing to take Apex money. They're willing to take this money to betray their country and allow this country to be destroyed. And they don't care. And it's not just this country that has the problem. Every country in the West has the same problem. And more countries in the East are starting to have the same problem. Most of the solutions, the real world solutions, are not government solutions. That's another thing that they trick a lot of people into thinking, that you got to have some kind of government program to fix a problem. When people just volunteering to fix problems fixes way more problems than trying to fix it with the government. The government is not very efficient. The government is like the most expensive way to fix the problem. It's like hiring the most inefficient, expensive company that is the least competent. I remember one time there was these potholes. I forget where it was at. And Domino's went and patched them and put in little Domino's. Regular people started fixing the potholes that the government wasn't fixing because it hurt their businesses. Then the government makes it illegal to do it. They start prosecuting people for it. The government, even if you self-defend yourself, if you don't call the police and you take care of something yourself, they get really mad about that. They want you to be dependent on them. They don't want you to not need them. And if you was to go back to having a community, you wouldn't need them for almost anything. They've separated everybody out as individuals. You know, a bunch of people working together could build a cathedral, could dig a lake, could do anything. But we get weak when we're all divided out as individuals. And they stay organized. You know, the government. They're not very efficient. They're stealing a lot of money. They don't really care. They only do as much good as what they got to do to keep their image to not just be overthrown. But they're really just a leech. Most of the priest class, most of the government class, the banking class, all of them, they're just leeches. I'm watching to see where I am on the road. Here, I'm about to be in the turn lane for work. I'm about to go to work. About to get off this live. But, you know, a lot of times, whatever problems you have in life, if you will take accountability and look at what you can do, a lot of times you can fix a lot of your own problems. You just can't do it all at once. But little incremental changes, if you're disciplined and stick with it, will add up, and eventually you'll be able to fix the problem. And a lot of there is a lot of strength in cooperation and organization and working together as a group. Like what I was talking about, we can do. You know, we have I wouldn't say godlike powers, but almost. I mean, it's amazing what a lot of people who are united can do when they're working together. But even as an individual, sometimes it's so hard to unite a group of people that you can really get more done by yourself with a lot of things. Hello. Casion Fraser. I probably didn't say your name right. But hello. I'm here at work. I gotta go to work. I'm gonna get off the live, but I hope y'all have a good day.